Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm your host, Brian Doyle. And today I'd like to welcome a very special guest into our business school community today. I want to introduce the CEO of Cavelo, James Mignacca. James, did I get that right?
You nailed it. It's
Awesome.
the Italian pronunciation was right on. Thank
You
you.
know, that's what happens when you got a mother who's named Claudia Gail Rosary Parlamento, right? You know, it doesn't get much more Italian than that. But I'm really excited to have you join us today. You know, I've been learning a lot about Cavelo over the last few weeks, especially as we've been kind of at the tail end of the show circuit for the summertime. And really interested about what you guys are doing over there. But before we dive too deep into that, why don't we kick things off with maybe you telling folks a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the MSP community?
Sure. First off, thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today. So my story is kind of unique. I kind of probably went at it a little bit backwards. So I started in the startup world, and this is almost 20 years ago, and we came from a company called Sandvine, and Sandvine did cybersecurity before cybersecurity was a marketing term.
Yeah.
We did it at the telco level, and what's interesting is a lot of the employees who've worked with me today and have worked with me at previous companies, we all came from that era. So, my two co-founders, Sandvine, and so I did get addicted to the startup world. I like to tell people you have to be a little crazy.
Yep. I'd agree wholeheartedly with that.
You like a little bit of pain every once in a while, but it's honestly, it's wildly awesome. And so what happened from there is I ended up actually acquiring an MSP. And I grew that business fivefold and turned it into an MSSP. And that I did that with my experience both at Sandvine in that whole cybersecurity era, and then there was another company called eSentire in between. And so I understood the ecosystem, although it was 10 years ago. I realized really fast that the MSP ecosystem is unique. People want to help each other, and ultimately what I had seen at the time was companies just don't have the expertise in-house to do it all. And I think from what I see today, that's only expediting, and especially when cybersecurity becomes more complex and regulatory compliance has come out and mandated everyone across the board needs to do the same type of compliance that a large bank would have to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of changed that landscape entirely. And so at the MSP, I ended up bringing some engineers over from Sandvine. And the problem that we were trying to solve was vulnerability management. And so we actually built a product called Root Secure, and it was pure play vulnerability management. And what was interesting to me is companies were taking large enterprise solutions and really trying to offer those through the channel or the MSP world. And it just doesn't work. It's really clunky. It doesn't work. And so what took place is we built out this product, and then we tried to sell to other MSPs. Well, interesting enough, that didn't work too well because we were an MSP, and opportunistically, we ended up actually just selling the MSP business off and focused just on Root Secure. So we spun out Root Secure and raised some money and all that good stuff. And then what happened was we formed a partnership with a company called Arctic Wolf. And they're pretty big in the MDR space. And I think 6 to 8 months into the partnership, the CEO called me up and said, "What's your appetite to get acquired?" And so long story short, we sold that business to Arctic Wolf. And then, a year later, we started, actually a year and a half later, we started Cavelo. And the same engineers followed me over to Cavelo, which is an honor, because truly they're the ones that make it happen on the product side. And I'm lucky. I'm truly lucky to have talented folks from the marketing and sales side on my team who have done this before. And so the difference between what we were doing before and what we're doing today is I realized that the attack surface management, effectively the threat landscape has changed. So if you think about the old days, we'd walk into an office, you'd sit there and do your thing on your computer, and all the files were on a file server somewhere, and then you leave. Well, COVID had accelerated this hybrid work from home. That means your data is everywhere, and truly it is. Cloud computing is actually happening, but you just don't go to one cloud service provider. It's minimum 5 all the way up to 50, and you still need to know where your data is, right? And so then regulatory compliance came out and said, this is not a nice to have, this is a need to have. You have to do these best practice criteria. And one of them that intrigued me was data discovery and classification. And so I realized, if you don't know where your data is, how are you going to protect it, right? And so right out of the gates, we knew we were going to create a platform for MSPs. We started with data discovery and classification because that was a hard technical hurdle for us to do it properly. So we started with that, and then we dovetailed that into who has access to the data. And then so we replace on the enterprise side Varonis, right, in the MSP world, which is awesome. And then we overlay vulnerability management to tell you what's your risk in your attack surface. And so what I always say is, you can't just look at vulnerabilities. That's a one-dimensional view into your threat landscape. There's 60,000 known vulnerabilities. No one's going to hatch everything. And so understanding the dynamics of where your data is and where your true risk is what we bring to the table to our partners.
And I think that journey you just laid out, and thank you for sharing, a little bit of the background there. Well, first thing, kudos that you're keeping your team together. I see some of the greatest software companies. One of the common characteristics you see after acquisition is the team hops to a new spot and comes up with another great idea. So, that's awesome that your team is following with you. It's a testament to building good technology and having a good culture, right? But going a step beyond that, some of the things that I want to unpack from what you were sharing in that conversation were, data discovery is huge. You're hearing all the MSPs, they all want to rally around CMMC. And one of the core tenets there is understanding where your unclassified data is. But a lot of them are not sure what that really means and how to go about doing that. So, I definitely think we should talk a little bit about that. But before we jump into that topic, let's go back to what you're saying about kind of the marketplace maturing, the fact that there is a shortage of resources out there, and how tools like yours can help bridge that gap. I don't know what number you've heard, James, but I heard a statistic that we're almost 400,000 cybersecurity professionals short for the jobs that are being listed right now out in the marketplace. And obviously the market itself is getting much more mature. If nothing else, cyber insurability is driving that conversation, even if they're not regulatory bound. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about kind of your approach to helping that maturation process, and then we can dive into a little bit deeper about how data discovery really can support an MSP's journey into helping people get regulatory compliant.
Perfect, Brian. What's interesting, from my perspective, what I see, it used to be traditionally MSPs would be known for servicing mid-enterprise and lower, right?
Right.
And so that's changed, right? So I see the market opening up, and it's because what you just said. It's the fact is we don't have enough. You can't hire one person to do cybersecurity or compliance, right? Yeah. And so leveraging a third party only makes sense. The other piece too is if you actually read the Regulatory Compliance Acts, the third party audit is key. Yeah. Like it literally says, like, you can't check yourself, right? And so having that third party through an MSP is good practice. Now, what I see on the larger scale is it's not just one MSP anymore. It can be multiple MSPs where they're experts in certain areas. So for us, it's interesting because we truly believe in the go-to-market through the channel. Like we've been there, we've done it. I do believe you need to tailor a product for the channel, like multi-tenancy. You got to tie into the APIs of the PSAs and the RMM tools and all that stuff. Be part of that ecosystem, and then truly enable them. And so, what I'm excited about is if you think about what's happening in the MSP world, there's this private equity is coming in and they're consolidating, right? They're making bigger MSPs, and we saw this with one of our early partners where it's like they had acquired 5 other MSPs, and that's great for us because then we just grow with them, and so that's all positive. And so when it comes to products like ours, the challenge really comes down to you have to make it super simple for them to productize this or whatever it is you're offering, like turn it into a service offering. And I knew this going into Cavelo, being that we were an MSP, you can't, the business plan of an MSP, you can't just hire people to do productization, if you will, right? They don't have the cash. It just doesn't work. And that's why enterprise solutions fail for them. And so what we do is we enable MSPs to have MSSP service offerings, and they can pick the module and whatever it might be, but you got to make it turnkey, like super easy. And it's got to tie into their ecosystem. And selfishly, what I tell people is like, I want to make it tied into their workflow systems because then we create more value for the MSP. It's not a tool anymore. And I cringe when people say we're a tool. We're a platform, right? We're more than that. And going back to your initial comment about data discovery, it's really interesting because, I have a story, and
so bring it on.
I obviously would never say names, but we have a customer where they have it's a finance, it's actually a hedge fund, and what happened was the legal team was working on a document, and it had all the contact information for their clients, and she accidentally saved it to her personal Dropbox that was open to the world. Like humans make mistakes. 80% of breaches happen because of human error, right? And now with cloud computing, there's more areas where that data can hide. And so you nailed it when it comes to regulatory compliance and DDQs when it comes to cybersecurity insurance. There is more demand when it comes to data discovery, classification, access management. Now, I will tell you, the key to being successful in that realm is, making sure that's easy to use, but less false positives, right? Because if you can't rely on the data, then it's garbage, right? And so we've really tailored the product to make sure that it meets those demands.
And that's, that simplification approach, making it easy for the MSP to use and then helping streamline so they don't have to identify it and you're really helping them identify it's critical. I agree totally with you in the concept that we say it all the time. VCIO Toolbox is just a process. The tool backs up the process and makes it repeatable and scalable, right? That's all that we're really trying to do here. But if you're not doing your piece on the front end, success won't come with it. And then the tools that we're choosing in the ecosystem are making it very easy to connect to bring that data in so they can tell the top level story in a way that business people understand, because that's who we're predominantly sitting across from. But I do like that you're pointing out that the market's getting more mature and rising up the ranks into larger organizations, because I'm seeing that as well. And I'm seeing those conversations are forcing, the MSPs to get better at their game. And for them to get better, they need partners. And I think you guys are doing a great job of helping reinforce that from an attack surface perspective.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, as you're moving forward with a customer, maybe talk a little bit about the ease of the onboarding journey, right? Because everybody's biggest hesitancy when they go to a new software platform is, what's it going to take for me to get this thing going? So maybe you can talk a little bit about what it would be like to, on day one as a Cavelo customer for the MSP.
Yeah. So for us, it's we have a dashboard, and that dashboard, we try to filter out the noise. Like at the end of the day, what you don't want to provide MSPs is more noise. They have enough of that, right? So, you know, what we do is we have a recommendation engine. What's your top 5 recommendations to that customer? And what we do is we quantify, this is the top 5 that affects the overall risk. And we overlay that into regulatory compliance, like best practice, all that stuff. And so then you can drill down and certainly get more details, which we encourage our customers to do. But at a glance, it's got to be super easy. As far as the onboarding, it's agent and agentless. So in order to do true data discovery, you have to have an agent. It's a light agent. You know, we actually just passed 40,000 agents deployed, which is a milestone on its own. And certainly, you know, we also have one agent for everything. So we make it so that you don't have to have multiple agents. And if you think about what we do is we actually consolidate the tech stack, right? So traditionally you go to enterprise, you get data discovery, classification, data access, and then vulnerability management. We consolidate that into one agent for our clients. And then the agentless part is we tie into the Office 365 through API connectors, and it's really easy. At the end of the day, it probably takes about 15 minutes to deploy. The only hurdle is the deploying of the agents, but that's just an RMM.
Yeah.
Nothing material.
No, that, you know, and that's awesome that it's as simple as kind of integrating with the tools that the MSPs use in a pretty straightforward process. And that consolidation of stack story is really one that's coming up more and more with the MSPs, you know, as their tool sets need to increase to answer some of these security bells. It's tough to get these tools together and not have to manage, you know, not just the tool itself, but the relationships within those tools, right? The support
Yes.
relationships and things like that. And the other thing that I hear, at least from our seat, that the MSPs are wary of is too many agents.
Yeah.
You know, so
Agent fatigue.
yeah.
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
when you hear, you know, that your system is not, you know, is putting one agent on, but can consolidate what might be 2 or 3 other tools for that customer, that's a compelling argument, because that's what we hear. Folks that come to us are because we're playing an agentless process and we're bringing people from the ecosystem in via API to bring in that information, as opposed to being another API, you know, another agent pulling some of the same data that they're already pulling from other spots, right? So, you know, talk a little bit maybe about how that efficiency is playing into, you know, your proposition with your customers.
Yeah, if taking a step back, think about 5 years ago, we used to talk about the onion, and it was like more layers, the better, right? It was like that. That's exactly how we'd sell cybersecurity. It's like you need layers, but think about Home Depot. They had the biggest onion ever. They still got hacked, and so. What I think is happening in the industry and what people have realized is when you have more layers, it's more complexity, right? And certainly, you know, there's overlap, which you could argue is good, but at the end of the day, what I believe is taking place is because of the complexity, there's more room for human error. Back to the human error piece.
Yeah.
I know of companies that would have these layers and many different tools. A lot of times they weren't configured properly. And most importantly, what I see is the noise to signal ratio. So, you know, you think about an MSP, at the end of the day, their job is to correlate when something's happening to turn into an action, right? When you have a ton of whatever it is, like alerts or triggers or whatever it might be, you're going to miss something. It's only natural as a human. And so consolidating that, making sure that you tie into the actual workflow so it creates tickets, I think that's critical for the success of that consolidation. The other piece is companies don't want to have 20 different vendors, right? If you think about it just from that perspective, when it comes to spear phishing and things like that, if you haven't done business, if you have 20 different vendors, there's 20 different vendors that could potentially send you spear phishing type of malicious activity through social engineering versus having 5. And so we absolutely play into that consolidation stack. You know, my last point is when you consolidate, it's a cost savings for the MSPs. I believe the MSPs need to make at least 150% markup. They should not get out of bed for anything less than that. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones that are actually creating that trust with their customers. We are the vendors. We're supplying the product. They're the ones that actually are doing the goodness with the product. And so at the end of the day, they need to make money.
And that's a great mindset to have, because a lot of the vendors that are coming into our space that haven't participated in our space don't understand how much that service level really is important to the success on both sides, right, of the relationship. And making sure that your partner can make money with what you're providing them is tantamount these days. We see it all the time. And, if we're not doing a good job, you're going to leave, right? But you've got to show a quick return on investment, a way that they can capitalize quick out of the gate and service the client at a higher level than they were before.
Yes, and you mentioned quality, and I just want to bring that up again. I think what took place was taking place over the last 5 years is you could use open source and get by, and these, it wasn't the enterprise grade solutions, but that's gone.
Yeah.
Even like manufacturing, all different industries, they're being forced to meet certain expectations that demands that quality, and whether or not it's performance quality or whatever it is, regulatory compliance is demanding it. So you think about large banks, their compliance to the SEC is the same as credit unions, hedge funds, mutual funds, dealer brokers. So they have to reach the same expectations as those large banks. Same with, you brought up CUI or CMMC. We have some customers that some of our MSPs have customers that will actually create the bolts for tanks.
Yeah.
Okay. They're mom and pop shops, right? And they're great at what they do. But then all of a sudden the compliance comes out and they need to reach certain expectations. It's just got to be super easy for them.
Yeah, and it does have to be super easy because they're part of the critical infrastructure. I used to deal with Sikorsky aircraft, and it was the same thing. You'd have a guy that designed one screw for one part of the Black Hawk and nothing else. But if he went out of business, they don't have that part anymore.
Yes.
So, but if compliance becomes too much of a burden, there's only so much money in the contract, right? So it's a very much a catch-22. And I think, all of this conversation dovetails to the lack of resources in the marketplace, the need to be able to be easy and frictionless to get to compliance, the fact that we need to partner more and make sure our customers make money are all messages that now today's vendor needs to bring to the marketplace in order to have any level of success, versus, hey, here's your software, go get them, right? And now it's really, how are we going to help enable you? And I think the easiest way is each of us has an expertise that usually isn't found on the MSP's bench.
Yeah.
And that's really what they're coming to us for too. You're filtering the noise so they know what they're getting out there is good results that they can then share and speak to.
Yeah. And I think everyone, like MSPs at the end of the day, there's an ecosystem out there. Not only do MSPs help out MSPs, but vendors need to help out each other.
Yeah.
And we need to tie in, right? So I'm a big believer in what you guys do is a huge add-on, and it complements, and there's a lot of synergy from what we do and other vendors like us, and we all need to work together to make it so that it's one solution as a holistic whole, and at the end of the day we're achieving the expectations that their end customers are demanding.
No doubt. And we're still giving them the freedom of choice, right? Because there are different schools of thought on how to approach that. There are now certain companies that are trying to give an integrated solution. And then there's the other side that are kind of giving the fully open space. And I think that's an important part too, because that open space where people can really be experts in their domain and not try to be everything to everybody is critical for our industry. Because as I joke about it every day. I get stupider because I learned something else in this industry I had no clue about, right? It's too big for any one small upstart MSP or software vendor, right? Even through the enterprise grade ones to handle and tackle on their own.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely.
So, we're getting near the end of our time, James. If people want to find you, what's the best way to find you?
I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. Just look me up. Go to our website as well, Cavelo.com. And anyone who wants to reach out, I always answer my my inbox. So happy to have a chat.
And we'll be posting James's LinkedIn link again with the website link in our show notes, both here on all the podcast channels and on YouTube. So it'll be very easy for you to find James that way. James, before we wrap up, any closing thoughts, any final message you want to share with our listeners?
I guess as a final message, I just think if you think about what we're all trying to achieve as vendors and MSPs, and I had this conversation about a week ago, that whole working together is critical, because the bad actors are only getting smarter when it comes to AI and how they're actually being malicious bad actors and the attack vector as a whole. And so, I think we all need to come together and work together and try to put together a cohesive solution. And, certainly, Brian, being on this podcast and talking to you is part of that. And I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. Folks, again, if you want to learn more about Cavelo, go out to cavelo.com, reach James on LinkedIn, and, certainly stay vigilant out there. James, thank you so much for joining me today, and, look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.